Good afternoon, everybody, and we will try to tackle the definitions for Vocabulary Unit 13 today together. And what I'll do is I will put up these words that are here, and hopefully you can cut and paste Unit 13 into your digital notebook and have it ready to go. And I will give you some clues, and then hopefully together we can pencil in what the definitions are. I'll only focus on the 6 words that are on this slide and jump around, seeing if you can come up with the definition in your brain, and then we'll both write them out together. Okay, the first one we'll start with, out of these 6, I'm asking you to choose the one that deals with being a disgrace or a public shame. For example, in sophomore year, there was a story called The Jilting of Granny Weatherall, and Granny was left at the altar by her first fiancé. It was a moment of great public shame, because she was jilted. She was left there. She says, what does one do when one has the white veil and there's the white cake and the priest is in the house, but there's no groom? What word is that? Ignominy. So ignominy means disgrace, or public shame. That's what Granny had to face when she was left at the altar with no groom. Many of you will know the definition of this next word, which means pure or spotless. We often associate it with the Virgin Mary. We actually have a feast day that deals with this word when she was actually conceived. We can also put it in terms of Dante and his feelings toward Beatrice. She seems to be a pure and spotless being for him. The word, of course, is immaculate. Pure, spotless, flawless. Again, sorry for the penmanship. Out of these 6 words, another term would be a wrong, an imagined wrong, or an injustice, an injury. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson has a long list of these against King George III. The word we're referring to, of course, is a grievance. A grievance is an injustice, a wrong, a real or imagined wrongdoing. Okay, so now we're down to 3. If you're going to light up a room or decorate something with color, just like the Grail and Percival did this to the room, we're talking about illuminating something, to light up, to decorate with color. So now we're down to 2. The first of which means someone who is of lowly birth or origin, someone who is unworthy. There is a moment in Oedipus Rex where Oedipus says that he fears Jocasta is worried that Oedipus may have been born of a slave. However, he's totally getting that wrong, but he thinks that she's worried that he would be of ignoble birth, of lowly origin, or someone who is unworthy, something unworthy. That leaves us with our final word on this slide, and that is illusion. We all know that there is this constant conflict between reality and illusion in literature. Even in Macbeth, when he sees the dagger before him, it is only an illusion of a dagger. So we could say that an illusion is a misguided vision. On to the next slide. Okay, and here we go on to our next 6 terms. Okay, out of the 6 that are here, there's one word that's all in the news right now. This idea that our current president may have done some things that are unsavory, perhaps even illegal, and there are political parties calling for his, impeachment. So to impeach is to charge with a crime in office. It is a term that we often use when it comes to government officials, to indict. Okay, also in this list is a verb that means to pierce, like Hector, who was pierced by Achilles' spear right at the area where the armor did not meet with the collarbone, that open spot. We could say that Oedipus does this to his, uses brooches to do this to his eyes. So to impale or to pierce would be what happens to both Hector and Oedipus. To impale, to pierce. If you're looking for someone to make a judgment because that person is going to be fair and just and will treat all parties fairly, we're saying that that person is impartial. To be fair and just, to play no favorites. At the beginning of the novel The Great Gatsby, you could say that Nick Carraway seems to be impartial. However, by the end, he's willing to call Daisy and Tom and Jordan careless people. People who make messes and expect others to clean up after them. Our next term means to be close at hand, to be impending. For example, Dante feels blank danger when Virgil says, "Behold the face of Dis." The word for this would be imminent, impending, near at hand, close by. And our last two, if you get pulled over for driving while impaired, that means that your driving has been worsened by some narcotic or alcohol or something like that. So actually I shouldn't make it past tense. Let's just make it present tense. To worsen. To impair would be to diminish in value. And I'm sure you've heard that expression. Again, a little bit sloppy. Sorry about that. To be impaired. Jealousy impairs Jean Forrester's judgment in the novel from sophomore year, A Separate Piece. And then lastly, our final word, impart. To impart knowledge to someone would be to communicate or bestow it. To impart, to communicate, to bestow, to make known. In the Bhagavad Gita, we could say that Krishna imparts knowledge of the soul to Arjuna, telling him that he should fight the good battle, that there's no such thing as death. Okay, on to the next slide. Okay, out of our next 6 words here, let's choose the one that deals with Oedipus's reaction at the place where the 3 roads meet. Do you think that it was equitable for him to slaughter everyone in that entourage simply because they asked him to move to the side of the road? What he was being was violent or impetuous, hasty, rash, acting without thinking. Impetuous. That may be one of his flaws, for sure. Shakespeare writes in one of his sonnets, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments." If it's a love of true love, then there should be no impediments or obstacles, obstructions. Nothing that would get in its way if it's a true love. So obstruction, hindrance. There are many impediments on the way to the Garden of the Gods for Gilgamesh. He has to go through the 12 leagues of darkness. He has to confront the man scorpions. He has to defeat the lions. Lots of challenges or obstacles in the way. The walls of Troy seem to be this. And in fact, Troy would never have fallen if they hadn't been duped by the trick of the horse. So if the walls seem to be impossible to enter or break through, we say impenetrable. So that would be impossible to break through or enter. Impervious would be a good synonym for this. impervious. This word pertains to anyone of an empire. You could talk about a family being this way, or the rule of an area would be imperial. It pertains or relates to an empire. Again, sorry for the spacing here. We have two words back to back that are kind of tight. One imperious and one impertinent. Impertinent actually has two definitions. We could think about it in terms of somebody speaking off topic. Your impertinent remarks are not relevant. I don't really need to know that you need a tissue right now when we're in the middle of this exciting lesson on Shakespeare sonnets. So impertinent there. Or it could mean someone who's being insolent or rude, like Pyrrhus towards Priam. When Priam refers to Pyrrhus's father, Achilles, saying that Achilles would never harm someone on an altar, even he had a bit of compunction. Pyrrhus's response is very impertinent, very rude, basically telling the Trojan king, so just die and tell my father that when you get to the afterlife. And then lastly, the word imperious. This would be the kind of word to describe a leader like Jack from Lord of the Flies. He is extremely domineering when it comes to his hunters. He's confrontational, and he really is not willing to listen to other sides. Like Agamemnon, too, would fit this in the beginning book of the Iliad. Okay, now we are on our final slide, and we're looking for the word that means to beg or to plead. I must blank you to work for peace. The children on the streets of Ireland are blanking people for money in Jonathan Swift's Modest Proposal. The word is importune. To beg, to plead earnestly. I importune you to study for the next test, right? To beg or plead earnestly. You may say that in the Inferno, Ugolino rebukes the blank of Ruggieri for not only starving him to death, but taking his innocent sons into the package deal. That kind of action just reeks of impiety. It reeks of wickedness, of irreverence. Let's see, what else can we say? Since we did importune, let's also do importunate. Because if someone is importunate, that means that they are, like children can be importunate. They're persistent to the point of annoyance. They're relentless when it comes to that. And not necessarily relentless in a good way. Okay, we have 3 more left. We're going to use secondary definition for this word, which means something of great significance. For example, in the story Percival did not understand that what he did was of great blank or significance until he met the lady in the forest who turned out to be his cousin, and she mentioned to him how his inability or his decision not to ask questions really sealed his fate as Percival the Wretched. The word that I'm referring to here is something of great import, something of great significance. We all know that an import is also the opposite of an export, but we're going to look at the definition of it in terms of something of great significance. And then our final 2, one, to strongly suggest something is to imply. We know that the opposite of this is to draw the conclusion, which would be to infer. But to strongly suggest or hint or intimate something would be to imply. And then lastly, implacable is a good word for Achilles. When Hector asks him to make a promise that neither one would harm the other's body should one of them be successful in this hand-to-hand combat, Achilles is implacable. He is incapable of being reasoned with. He is incapable of being pacified. He says, I will have no pacts. There are no pacts between sheep and wolves. There are no pacts between wolves and lambs. Okay, so I think hopefully those definitions make sense, and then you would be ready to take your quiz at the right time, perhaps next Thursday. Thank you.